Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Brice Lewis. Obviously, we're going to give you more NBA news and notes to start the show. And also, we're going to go into the Western Conference this episode. Teams in review from the Western Conference. I'm going to give you 5 today, 5 next show, and 5 a week and a half from now. So obviously now, if you're a Western Conference fan, the potential teams that you could be a fan of could be talked about today. I'll go ahead and give y'all who I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans, the Golden State Warriors, the Portland Trail Blazers, the Denver Nuggets, and the Houston Rockets. Now, like I said, we're going to go into the news and notes around the league. Obviously very, very slow news. So we're just going to talk about initially anything that just pops up on the NBA circuit. Just more coronavirus news, really. Hopefully everybody, like I said, everybody's out here still, dealing with the coronavirus, isolating yourselves, washing your hands, getting your mask, doing all of that. Just doing everything you can to really move forward through this crisis and, getting through it. It's tough for everybody out here, but, it's something we gotta go through. So, let's just show them how tough we are. But we do have some players who are now officially cleared, and we also have some not NBA players, but people who work with the NBA, owner and a reporter for the NBA who has it now. We're going to start with the people who have it. Owner of the Knicks, James Dolan, has tested positive for the coronavirus. Obviously, is the owner of the New York Nets. I mean, not the Knicks. And obviously, listen. Obviously, this disease is something to be taken seriously, but I'm sure there are some people who aren't mad about this. I'm just going to say that. But he has it. Obviously, wish him a speedy recovery. They say he has little to no symptoms, so it doesn't seem like anything serious. And he should be able to get through it within the 2-week period usually that it takes to get through this disease. Also, Doris Burke tests positive for the COVID-19. Obviously, Doris Burke is a world-renowned reporter and broadcaster, commentator, color for the NBA. We remember Doris Burke, obviously, when Drake asked her out on a date on Twitter, and she has very, very much respect as one of the women pioneers in this reporting and broadcasting and journalism world of basketball. Very well respected around the league. Sad that she has it. Hopefully she gets through it, and she ends up being fine because, obviously if we lost Doris Burke, it would be a big loss to the NBA community. And, we wish her the best through this, and, we'll let you know if anything happens, from now until whenever this passes by. So, just stay tuned for that. But, also now we're going to go to the players who have now cleared it. Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell have officially cleared the coronavirus. So now they have officially been, they're cleared. They're ready to go. Obviously they're ready to go, but the rest of the world isn't. So they're still going to be isolated, but they're not dealing with any symptoms anymore. So they're pretty happy about it. Marcus Smart also is another player who was cleared of the coronavirus. He was cleared. So obviously it was a good day for 3 players in the league, that they were cleared. They're not dealing with it, and now they can go about their future without it. Obviously, since they've gotten it, they're immune to it. So if anything, they may have more confidence to go into public because they can't really get it again. But, luckily for them, they've done well, and glad that they're 100% healthy and ready to go. Also, Christian Wood, also from the Detroit Pistons, I think mentioned last episode, was cleared. And there was another report that he came out that was a little upset that the test was leaked, that he got positive. So, obviously that happens. But that's pretty much what's happening in terms of Corona news. Who doesn't have it anymore? Who does have it? We're still waiting on Kevin Durant. I think he was very close to Marcus Smart, of not just before. Well, actually not just. I think it was a little bit after. Or maybe he was just before Marcus Smart. I think it was before Marcus Smart. But we haven't gotten a clearance on Kevin Durant. So hopefully next show maybe, or by the end of this week, we'll hear Kevin Durant being cleared of the coronavirus as well. But we also haven't heard anything negative, too, from the Durant camp. So it looks like Kevin must be able to handle it pretty well and is doing okay so far through his recovery. So now we're going to do a little game, actually, with you guys. Obviously, right now, everybody's just playing reruns or playing old classic moments and playing all types of games and making all types of things up right now, as obviously the coronavirus has limited entertainment. And obviously a lot of NBA Twitters have been doing a lot of, different games, start one, bench one, cut one, who's the best duo, who would be the best duo, which team would you think would win, things just like that, because there's nothing else really to do. And I'm going to do one with y'all. I'm going to do a start one, bench one, cut one with you guys. And the three players we're going to use is we have the 81-point game Kobe, we have the 63-point game MJ, and we have the Game 1 Finals LeBron of 2018. I'm going to give you all mine, and obviously, you can interact on social media or, wherever, tweet about it, and give your analysis. I'm probably I'll probably start 81-point game Kobe. I'll probably bench Game 1 LeBron and cut the 63-point MJ. I just feel like that LeBron in Game 1 of that NBA Finals was unstoppable. And obviously LeBron has the unstoppableness. And, I feel like he gets the nod over the 63-point MJ. Especially if you're talking about in today's game, obviously Jordan did not shoot the three. LeBron can shoot the three. So, just having that extra, part of his arsenal can really make a difference. And obviously 81-point game Kobe, he was unstoppable that game. And then, knowing that Kobe can go off for 70 any night, basically, I don't see why you would not want to start him, knowing the type of talent and ability that he has. And I feel like 63-point MJ, obviously we know how great MJ is, but if you say Game 6 MJ, then yeah. Because that means we're not losing that game. If they say Game 6 MJ, we're not losing that game. Because MJ never loses in Game 6. But they just say 63-point game MJ could still lose that game. So I'd rather take 81-point Kobe and just be like, hey, I'm getting more points basically. Because it feels like if you pick MJ, you're like, well, what's the difference? Because Kobe got more points, unless you're saying that maybe, MJ will be more efficient. But, it's just whatever you think is best. And I was like I said, Game 1 LeBron, he was playing angry that game in Game 1 against the Golden State Warriors, obviously trying to have some type of momentum towards the future with their team, and obviously that got ruined. So that's who I would go with. I'd like y'all to tell me who y'all would go with or what y'all thoughts are on it. Obviously, because these are games that obviously people do play, everything like that. So, we'll have to see what happens, what I'm saying. Also, 3 years ago, on March 29th, 2018, I believe. It was either 18 or 17. I believe it was 17, actually. I think that was the year Russell Westbrook won MVP. He went off for 57 points on more than 50% shooting, 6 of 15 from 3, 11 assists, 13 rebounds, a 21-point comeback against the Orlando Magic, 19 points in the final 6 minutes in a second, a game-tying 3 to force overtime, and the most points ever in a triple-dub at the time, with booming MVP chats while they were playing on the road while Russell was still in Oklahoma City playing again against the Orlando Magic. Obviously, we have to put some spotlight on Russell Westbrook career for what he's done. Obviously, during that time, he was a triple-double machine. He did everything he could Probably one of the most efficient Russell Westbrook games we've ever seen. People always say you don't usually think that, but that's usually how it is. So, I mean, I think that's pretty much the appreciation, Gotta give appreciation to Russell Westbrook, one of the best point guards in the game. And he's going to be a legend when it's all said and done. But that's all the news and notes and just games and other things like that we're going to do right here in the first segment. Now we're going to get into the season reviews for the rest of the show. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans season in review. We're going to discuss everything from free agency draft, their season up to this point, and for so on and so forth. So stay tuned right here on the podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we just did some news and notes around the league. Discussed some guys who were cleared from the coronavirus. 3 NBA players, Marcus Smart, Rudy Gobert, and Donovan Mitchell was all cleared from the coronavirus. We also talked about 2 people who just got the coronavirus within the NBA league. Doris Burke, top broadcaster, color commentator, and reporter for the NBA on ESPN, and owner of the New York Knicks, James Dolan. So obviously we wish all of them speedy recovery, and we are happy that all of our players are now becoming healthy. And like I said, we're waiting for Kevin Durant to get that clearance, so it'll be interesting to see when he gets that and going on and so forth. Also did a little game, played cut, bench, or start with 3 players, LeBron, Michael Jordan, and Kobe. And just some other things, just talk about whatever first segment, just have a little fun, have some freedom. But now we're going to get into the season reviews. And the first team I said we're going to start with was the New Orleans Pelicans in their season. So, obviously the Pelicans were a team that, about the situation from last year, the Anthony Davis situation. Anthony Davis didn't want to be there no more. So they had to make a move. And they traded him. And they traded him to the Lakers. And they were able to get Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, all back in that trade. They also got lucky in the draft lottery and was able to get the first overall draft pick. So, this helped them out a lot. They were able to draft Zion Williamson, the touted, most hyped player coming out of college since LeBron. People expect him to be an instant superstar. But, obviously, with all these moves that are being made, David Griffin being the new GM, there began to become excitement again around New Orleans basketball. But then, during the preseason, Zion had gotten injured. So obviously, their big star was hurting, and he was out after getting knee surgery, which obviously people are concerned about because obviously Zion's weight and his knees were a very big concern. A lot of people asked a lot of questions. Could he stay healthy? Would he have to lose weight? If he lost weight, would that take away from his game? So obviously Zion missed the first half of the NBA season. But the Pelicans still had something to look forward to. You really had you look like on paper you have a good little team. You still got Drew Holiday, one of the best 2 guards in the league, on both ends. You signed JJ Redick, a sharpshooter, a marksman. You got Josh Hart, Lonzo, Brandon Ingram. You got some guys. Now, to start the season, the Pelicans did not play that well. They were poor defensively, even though they were able to score offensively, and just did not get off to a good start. But obviously, some things did go well. Brandon Ingram really grew. Brandon Ingram averaged 25 points a game. Obviously, people were thinking he could have potentially been a bust after not potentially working out as well with the Lakers. And now with the Pelicans, he's averaging 25. So that was obviously great. Lonzo also didn't have the greatest start to the season, but he started to come on later into the season. He started playing better basketball. Josh Hart, been a consistent bench piece. And they were playing better when it got to 2020. So then also in 2020, Zion was getting closer to coming back. The team was playing better. They were still within reach to make the playoffs. And it's worked for everybody. And going on and so forth. Then Zion came back. Zion had that very explosive first game back in the fourth quarter, but the Pelicans had him on minutes restrictions. And obviously that hindered, I guess, to some people, him. Because even though he was able to do a lot in the short time that he had, people felt like there was so much more of Zion to see. And really, you were able to get a taste of why people feel like he was the next superstar. He was the next LeBron. He was the next big guy to carry not just the Pelicans, but the NBA. Because you got to think about it. There's always been that big star or stars in every generation that was able to carry the NBA on their back as why you watched NBA games. Of course, we're all fans of the NBA, but think about it. When LeBron was not playing, playoff ratings went down because it's not LeBron. Wherever LeBron is, you're going to watch it. Regardless if you hate him or love him. You hate him, you want to see him lose, so you're watching it. You love him, you want to see him win, so you're watching it. Not every player has that type of influence upon fans. You got to think about it. Jordan was that player back in the 90s. You had to watch him. You hated him, you loved him. You watched Jordan. Especially when they started their dynasty. NBA ratings were up. Before that, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. They were responsible for helping get the NBA out of the law they were in, being on tape delay and everything like that. They helped the league get back stable again within TV deals and everything. And then after Michael Jordan, LeBron came in. Remember, Jordan retired in 2002. LeBron came in 2003. It worked. So you only had a year where you didn't have that. Now, you did have Shaq and Kobe, who were stars, but we didn't know at that time still yet if Kobe was going to be that type of generational star. So, but you could say for the first part, Kobe was for a little bit. But then LeBron had all that fanfare coming out of high school, being called the chosen one, all that hype. It's crazy because these are the players that you hype all the way from when they're still in school. And you just know when they hit the league, they're going to change the league. They're going to make people watch the league. And Zion, now with LeBron getting older, even though he's going to play a few years into Zion's tenure, is looked at as the guy who will carry the league after LeBron leaves. And that's why this pick, I think so many people thought was so big for New Orleans to have a guy like this. Because Anthony Davis was great, but he's not Zion in terms of hype, in terms of marketability. Season tickets, money, ratings go up for Zion. That's the type of impact he has. And in the Pelicans, you know, young team around him, they had some guys. Lonzo showed he could play this year. Brandon Ingram had a breakout season, was in line to win Most Improved Player. They have J.J. Redick, Drew Holiday. They have guys. Alvin Gentry may not be the best defensive coach, but he can coach some offensive basketball. And that's what was the strength of these guys. And so they were in the race for the playoff hunt. Now, obviously, before this hiatus, they had lost some games. They were starting to drop in the standings. It was looking more unlikely they were going to get the playoffs. But they were making it interesting. And it sucks again because he's one of those what ifs, obviously. What have the Pelicans done? Would they have been able to potentially make the playoffs? These are always questions that you're going to ask. So, I mean, it was just a big deal from that regard. Pelicans have a lot to look forward to going into the future. They start the season next year. You got Zion, who probably won't be on the minutes restriction. Lonzo for another year. Ingram for another year. You never know. Drew Holiday could be traded, but until then, he'll be there for another year. JJ. They're going to add some pieces, maybe draft a piece. Remember, if they make the playoffs, they're still getting a lottery pick. So they're going to get a lottery pick. Pelicans could be an even better team next year. 1 year more matured. Players can work on their games. And that can provide the ability for these guys to then take off next year. Not have to start off so slow. Be in the race or in the playoff from game 1 to game 82. The Pelicans have a lot of potential as a team and as an organization. They're trying to get their structure right. David Griffin is a very good GM. Even with LeBron, people said he was a good GM. It's easy to sit here and say, oh, LeBron, but he was a good GM. He made a lot of those moves that actually helped Cleveland become competitive and stay competitive. And he's doing it now with the Pelicans. He's doing everything he can right now to help the Pelicans be very competitive. Moving forward, going forward, and trying to be great. Because if he could get a franchise who has always been never known as a basketball season, never known as a basketball power, to now become one of the most popular teams because they have one of the most popular players in the NBA, and then they start creating a winning product, you got to give all the credit for Dave Griffin. Obviously, like I said, luck of the draw of the lottery. They were able to get Zion. And if they can make this work and make some of the right deals and trades and whatever to formulate this team for years to come, the Pelicans could be a team to be watched out for the next couple of years. So you definitely want to keep an eye on that, and you don't want to sleep on them. So, but coming up next, we're going to talk about the Golden State Warriors season in review right here on the podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the New Orleans Pelicans, their season in review, obviously coming back all the way from the Anthony Davis situation through the offseason, being able to get that big trade for Anthony Davis, to get Lonzo, to get Brandon Ingram, to get Josh Hart. Then on top of that, being able to get a high draft pick, getting the number 1 overall draft pick in this draft, getting Zion Williamson, one of the players that people believe will be a transcendent player for years to come and will be the next guy to carry the league when LeBron leaves. And having, build as a team, had a decent roster, you built as a team, you got better, you were competing for the playoffs late in the year. Zion came back, he had great performances, multiple 20-point games, and just really giving the city of New Orleans a excitement about their basketball team that they apparently have not had for a very long time. Obviously, it's been a football-dominated season with LSU and the Saints, but now the Pelicans can now rise to power. That will create an opportunity for now a city to embrace their basketball squad. But now, we're going to go into the Golden State Warriors season in review. Obviously, the Golden State Warriors are not what we expected them to be this year. Well, they were, but not this bad, but, basically, we weren't expecting to be a championship contender. Obviously, the last 3, 4, 5 years, they have been in the finals since 2015. So almost 5 whole years, they were in the finals. And now they have the worst record in the league. Obviously, if you know, last year was the last year of the Kevin Durant experiment, getting them 2 championships in 3 years. Kevin Durant left Golden State to go to Brooklyn. So you still had Draymond, Clay, and Steph. Problem was, last year in the NBA Finals, even though KD was hurt, Steph got hurt in the last game of that Finals with a torn ACL, so he was done for the year. So all you had was Steph and Draymond. Then a couple of games into this season, Steph gets a broken hand and literally is out till March. So basically, that's still Golden State's fate. And they were just going to have what people call a reset year. A year where you got to be bad before you become good again. Obviously, like I said, these types of seasons are a good chance for these young players that are having a chance to play, prove that they can play in this league. Second, prove that they belong on the future team, regardless of whatever happens. Like they deserve to be a part of this team, probably from a bench perspective, but still a valuable member. And also just show other teams they can play. Because Golden State, people have always looked at them as they're planning for the future anyway. They're planning to be good next year. People expect Golden State to be good next year when Klay comes back, Steph's back. Expectation sounds like Draymond is expected to be back, but we'll see. Obviously, like I said, Golden State has the worst record in the league, so they'll have the best odds to get the number 1 draft pick. But obviously, with the new draft lottery, that is not a guarantee. Like I said, this season they have some young guys. Eric Pascal, for opinion, he has been very well. Rookie, played well. He's a guy I think Golden State. Remember, all these guys are not expensive whatsoever. So these are some of these guys they're probably going to keep. So Eric Pascal is a guy I definitely expect him to lead. Lee, I expect them to keep him there too. They signed Willie Cauley-Stein. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep him around. I also think, maybe they could potentially keep a guard around. Obviously, again, when you have a lot of star players that you're paying max money to, you don't really have as much money to put into the bench. So like I said, a lot of these guys could really just stick around next year, but just be in a bench unit. But since they've had starting experience for a whole year, they're much more they're more improved. They're up to date. They know the offense and they can still play. Cause the Golden State showed even with a lackluster bench, they can win. If Steph, Klay, Draymond, all them do their thing, they can still win. Cause their offensive Golden State is predicated to give everybody an opportunity to be able to do something. So all you need is someone else having a good night, and then you'll be fine. But, obviously they also traded for Andrew Wiggins during the year. Obviously everybody's very intrigued to see what they do with Andrew Wiggins, because some people think he was traded to potentially be a trade bait for a bigger player. Some people think if they can't pick a bigger player, he's going to have to stay, but he's not a bad player. Like he could maybe work with Klay and Steph. A lot of people have questioned Andrew Wiggins' work ethic and desire to play this game. And obviously he's been in a losing franchise in Minnesota for years. And some people feel like he hasn't maximized his potential as he should have. So the belief here is that Steph and Klay can get the most, if he's put to a winning culture, Steph, Klay, and Draymond, they can get the most out of Andrew Wiggins because he is very talented. He's a very talented player. It's just, sometimes teams are feeling frustrated because they feel like they haven't gotten, or Minnesota was frustrated because they feel like they didn't get the most and best out of him as they possibly could on a night-to-night basis. So obviously that was something that, hindered them a little bit. So it'll be interesting if they can't go after bigger fish, which has been reported all year. They're targeting Giannis. They're hoping that they could potentially sway the Bucks to want to come, hoping potentially maybe Giannis might want to leave and going on and so forth. But, obviously we have to see. So if they keep that lineup next year, you would think Golden State could be a playoff team for sure next year with those 4 guys as their main players. With all the players they can keep from this year's team and whoever else they add and sign or whatever in free agency, they have all the potential to still be a good team. So it just really depends. Golden State, they've always been ahead of the curve. Always been ahead of the curve. They've always been that team who was ahead, and so that's why they were able to get the success earlier than everybody else. Steve Kerr has really made himself into a great head coach, doing this, winning and doing well with what he has, instilling confidence to all his players, doing what they need to do to be successful. Because it's going to be difficult in these types of years where you're losing to easily just give up, say screw it, whatever. But Steve Kerr still came out there every game like they were going to win, and coach these guys to maximize on their potential growth throughout the season, because he knows it's important to get these guys ready for next year and to know who we're going to keep into next year. So then we can now formulate another championship team that we can use to now make a run at the NBA Finals and potentially bring another championship back to Golden State. Obviously, the West Conference is going to be different because really before it was Golden State, then everybody else trying to catch Golden State. Now your top two teams are the Lakers. Golden State's going to be looking up at them. But I'm sure that's something everybody's going to want to see when a fully healthy Golden State with a fully healthy LA versus a fully healthy Clippers or Lakers. It's what you want to see. So this season, like I said, was just a year of just not the best, but still important. And just making sure you have your plans really in place for next year, because Golden State always thinks ahead. If they can pull off a big trade of getting Giannis, obviously they'd be the favorites. Deservedly. But if not, we'll have to see. We'll have to see who they would even take. I think if you don't think you could get a better player than Wiggins, I don't see them making a trade. Obviously, that's the reason why they would want the number 1 overall draft pick, because that would probably put them in position to now get a better player. Because there's no way that it's going to be Wiggins and that number 1 overall draft pick if they were able to get it. And that's going to be pretty, because you get a solid young player, and you either potentially draft the best player in this coming draft. So that could be a great building block. But you got to think about what you need. Obviously, Steph and Clay are there. Maybe somebody you might want to throw out there, maybe potentially Devin Booker, that he would work in Golden State. Clay could go to the 3. I don't know if that's something they want to do, but you never know. Golden State's that team that might surprise you, so you never want to rule these types of things out, but that's just a suggestion I think I just put out there. But that was Golden State's season review. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the Portland Trail Blazers, their season in review. Everything that was, injuries, everything like that. We're going to discuss that, all of that right here and more on the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we discussed the Golden State Warriors season in review. We obviously talked about from the Kevin Durant leaving to all the way to the season, Steph Curry getting hurt, Klay Thompson getting hurt in the finals, how their season has really turned out, how this is just a year to really basically see from the roster you have who you want to keep for next year's team. Because Golden State's going to be top heavy, so there won't be a lot of money to give out to a lot of bench players. So you got to take the young rookies and players that you have on this team now, decide who do you think can still help us and contribute and give us a good bench unit. So when Klay, Steph, and all of them get back, Andrew Wiggins and Draymond, they'll be ready to go when it's time to go. Because obviously you want to make sure that you're always on top of your game at all times. So I think that's going to be very important for the Golden State Warriors moving forward. And obviously they can pick up a big superstar. That will definitely help them out going into long terms. But so, next team we're going to talk about here in the season review for the Western Conference, the Portland Trail Blazers. The Portland Trail Blazers, now, they're obviously in a situation where, you know, they made it to Western Conference Finals last year. They haven't been there in literally years. many, many, many years. And they got swept by Golden State 4-0 without KD. But think about it. You make it to the Western Conference Finals, you're like, wow, we're one of the final two in the Western Conference. We're one of the best Western Conference teams in the entire Western Conference. Translate to this year. Out the gate, Portland was slow and sluggish, having a losing record basically the whole year. Damian having to have these historical performances to try to carry the team and everything like that. But the biggest thing to me that really showed was the fact that injuries and a lot of new players. People don't remember. Portland made a lot of changes this offseason to the roster to try to get better. They lost guys like Miles Leonard, and other guys. I think Alpha Lukuminu too, and other guys. They brought in guys like Kent Bazemore, and etc. They made some changes. They made some moves, and they were dealing with that. Plus, Zach Collins was hurt, up-and-coming young big man for the Portland Trailblazers. Nurkic, who is their best big man, who really, when he plays, the team is different, has been hurt the entire season, coming off a season injury from last year. And just, CJ's been in and out of the lineup. Damian missed a few games. It was just a big, a lot of stuff changed. Obviously they brought Hassan Whiteside. He's done well for what they needed, but he's not what Nurkic was. And like I said, just a lot of changes were made. And you noticed it, you watched it, you saw it. And it was one of those things that you just kind of sat back and realized, like, dang, okay, like, there's a lot of talent here, there's a lot of potential here. But something isn't adding up. Why is this team struggling to win ball games? And I definitely think the injuries played the biggest part in why they struggled to win ball games. And I know it must be very frustrating because they put in so much work. And just to have injuries happen, and now your season's derailed, and you're not even sure you're gonna make the playoffs after making it to the Western Conference Finals. It's not easy on the mental for any of these players, especially Damian and CJ. And so, it'll be a shame again if they start the season back and they have to cut out the regular season games, because it feels like the dilemma is that if you try to do regular season games, how many can you really do before you start the playoffs? I feel like preferentially they'll want regular season games so that players can give a chance to get their feet back under them. But also you got to think about teams who are battling for playoff spots. They're having to come back out of the gate like, oh, we got to go because we're competing for the playoffs. Portland was one of those teams. They might have made it in if this hiatus never happened. And so I think it's very important that, organizationally and everything, the expectations were higher this year. Expectations were much higher and should have been based off last year's success. So Portland has decisions they have to make. They traded for Trevor Ariza to add some help. If you look at this team fully healthy, this team could make a run in the Western Conference. We just haven't been able to see that team. Now, obviously, I feel like some people feel like, well, you still have Damian, you still have CJ, they still should be able to be good. But I feel like it just shows how important it is when it's a team game. If you lose valuable pieces to what you do, sometimes not even stars can overcome those problems. Not everybody's LeBron, who can take a team that can only win 20 games without him and get him to 53. That's just not, not everybody can do that. But it don't mean you can't win. You just have to put a team around them. Honestly, you could say that was LeBron's downfall, is that teams knew, well, we don't have to put every piece around him. But you would just feel like, if we did put pieces around him, if he could take a bad team to the finals, what if we put a good team around him? Wouldn't that mean we should be favored to win? So those are all things that are very difficult. moving forward for the Portland Trailblazers. But they still have a chance. If they give them games to start the playoffs, they might make the playoffs. If they got to the playoffs, they'd be the AFC, play LA. I've always said that would be their toughest test, LA, if they had to play. If they had to play a healthy Blazers team, because that's another team that could benefit from this hiatus, it's Portland. Nurkic could come back. Zach Collins could be back. Damian just got back from his injury before the hiatus started. He'll be back, fully healthy. CJ will be healthy. Everybody will be healthy. Both teams will be healthy. But we've seen the Lakers mainly all season healthy. We haven't seen the Portland Trailblazers healthy. So that could surprisingly be a very competitive series. If Portland steals a game or two from LA, I would not be shocked. And I know people are going to look at that and think, because especially let's say the Clippers handled business and swept their team or only won in 5 games. Oh, the Lakers, they're in trouble. They couldn't beat Portland in 4 games. Yeah, a fully healthy Portland team who just made it to Western Conference Final last year, and the only reason why they're not as good this year is because of injuries. Yeah, the Lakers are not that good. Because obviously everybody's going to still predict the Lakers to win that series, and I would predict them too to win the series. But you got to give credit that's due where it's due. You really never want to count out CJ and Dame. Because if they go off, the Lakers are going to have a handful in their hands. And remember, the first round is usually Damian's best round. So if you get Damian Lillard in the first round, he out here averaging 30 a game, that's not good. He's also shown he can be one of the most clutch players in the NBA also. But if they can get in, if they have the chance to get in, I think it'll be a great opportunity. But if they don't get in, it's okay. Because I feel like this is one of those teams I feel like you can't really tell if you need to separate the team. Because you weren't healthy. Then the coronavirus stopped everything. So you've never seen this fully healthy team that you've already put together in the playoffs and seeing how they play. Now, yes, you may still say, well, they're going to finish as the 8th seed, so that still might be enough. But this really could save this roster. Because they're like, well, we don't know what we look like when we're healthy. So who am I as a GM to say I need to break this apart if I've never even seen them together? So, of course, if the offseason comes, you're going to make additions if you feel like they're needed, or you try to upgrade positions or whatever. But I don't feel like they're going to break apart this core, because you haven't seen it with these new pieces in the situation that you want to see them in and see how they perform, which is in the playoffs. So they have plenty of things they can do long term, stay successful, stay good, and move forward. And, Portland's going to be a team that, underrated city. I've heard Portland is a beautiful city. And they love their basketball team. Damian is loved up there. And, we'll have to see what happens moving on into the future with the Portland Trailblazers. But that was the Portland Trailblazers season in review. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the Denver Nuggets and review their season right here on the podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the Portland Trailblazers and their season in review, how Portland's season basically can be summed up by injuries. A lot of new players, so chemistry wasn't always right, and not having everybody on the court hurt the team. created the slow start, put a lot of pressure on Damian and CJ to carry the load. And, obviously, like I said, it would suck if this hiatus was permanent for this current season, because if they were able to play the regular season games they had left, maybe Portland still could have gotten into the playoffs and we could have seen them more. I did talk about what would happen if they were able to sneak in. But if not, this is a team that I think you shouldn't break up. Obviously, if there's an improvement to be made, you make it. But if you can't really break the team up because you haven't seen them all on the floor together with the new pieces, you can't judge it unless you see it. And I feel like that's where this would at least add an extra year onto this core in Portland to continue to play and potentially try to bring a championship to the Portland Trail Blazers. But now, our next team in review will be the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, the Nuggets coming off of a year last year where they were number one seed in the Western Conference, surprising a lot of people. Losing in Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals to the Portland Trail Blazers in Game 7, obviously was a good learning experience for those guys. A young team, a lot of young players, Joker and Jamal Murray, first time playoff experience. And they were able to get some valuable experience. This year, they've still been a top 3 seed. Not been as great, but still good. Denver is one of those teams, the way they're constructed, a lot of the players are around the same level. Like in terms of, there's not like, it's not like where you say it's LeBron, AD, and everybody else. You don't really say that with Denver. Yeah, Jamal Murray and Joker are the best players, but some people question if Joker's really that good. He's just a good player, but is he that good? Yes, he's an elite passer, but is he a great center? Because of the fact that he is not a guy who can sit there and dominate a game, but he can definitely impact the game, but he won't dominate a game like, you would think players from the center position would do. Jamal Murray still is probably the best pure scorer on the team, but it's just a matter of can you trust him to give you what you need on a night-to-night basis, play clutch basketball, play good basketball, and play at a high level. Is he good enough to be that guy? That's the question with Jamal Murray. And then you have a lot of other guys like Paul Millsap. I've always said I think Michael Porter Jr., if they gave him more minutes, he would be the X factor because he's a guy who has that superstar potential. And you've seen it in a couple of games this season, but he's been in and out of the lineup with injuries. Obviously, there's a lot of, also the thing about Denver is they have a lot of depth. So not everybody can get a lot of minutes. It just depends on who has the hot hand. So sometimes he'll get lost in the shuffle. But they got him. Gary Harris, he's a good player. He plays well. He's a guy who could do what he can do. Will Barton. They got guys. It's just, is it a concoction that, can win you a championship? That's kind of the big thing. Is it able to come together and win you a championship? And I think a lot of people don't know. Where they may be a great regular season team, but it doesn't mean they're going to be a great playoff team. Right now, since Denver, we still think maybe is kind of in the beginning stages. We'll have to see. We'll really have to see what they come up with as a team. Obviously, when the season comes back and they go with the playoffs, they'll be in the playoffs. A lot of people are expecting probably at best another second round exit because everybody expects the LA teams, unless the seeding goes in a way where they would have to play each other semifinals. You expect both LA teams to make it, so you would think Denver wouldn't win or any of the other teams in the Western Conference would get past them. I think ideally you would probably want a Lakers, Houston, Denver, Clippers second round matchup to give the best matchups possible in the Western Conference, in my opinion. It definitely will be interesting. Denver, they're one of the best home teams in the league. And outside of their first round series, they'll probably be on the road 4 times instead of 3 times in the series. And obviously, since they're a young team, you wonder, can they overcome that? You know, like I said, they've had a lot of success. Remember, they had home court throughout the entire Western Conference playoffs and lost Game 7 in Denver to the Portland Trailblazers. Are they really... It's almost like, can Denver make a jump? Or are they just a good team that's just going to be good? They're going to win you a lot of games, and then they're going to have a playoff exit. You know, do they have another gear? And that's where I think a lot of people wonder about Denver, is do they have an extra level they can go to then reach higher levels of success? Would they ever think about potentially trading guys like Joker in the future or Jamal Murray to try to get a better player? You know, obviously, right, those are your two core pieces, and obviously this year will be another year to see if they can be what you need them to be. But there's no guarantee. There's no assurance. There's a lot of uncertainty. And you're really just trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure it out. If you're a Denver fan. Are we even good enough to compete with some of the best teams? Realistically. Are we good enough? Because right now, everybody's going to say no until they upset somebody. Or they make a big move that brings in a player that would put them over the top. But we don't expect that to happen. At least anytime soon. So, definitely have to see what happens with that. I think Denver obviously has a lot of talent. It's just, is it the right talent in division in this conference? It's just one of those situations where with teams forming such great teams, you can be a very talented team. And if the league was wide open, we could sit here and say Denver could be the team to win the championship. But with the Lakers and Clippers doing what they do and having the teams that they have, it just seems like it's very hard to say if Denver coming back, if they come back from the hiatus, can go into one of those two series and beat one of those teams. You just don't think it's likely. And I'm sure the Denver's brass is going to have some conversations and things they really need to think about because of that. They got to start making decisions. What do we have to do? How can we get better and then compete with these teams? Because I feel like you're in a position where you're close, so you don't want to just say, all right, we're going to give up on it for now and then try to rebuild later. It's maybe if we just make this move, maybe if we just make this tweak, maybe that could be what gets us to where we want to go. Because Denver's a good team. They're fun to watch. A lot of young guys. They're a very likable team. It's just, in just the plain aspect of it, are they good enough to get the job done? And until we see them do something like an upset or shock the world, the playoff series is one of the best teams. We're not going to say yes. We're going to say no. And, you know, you hope that Denver doesn't end up in that proverbial mediocre hole of just, this is what we are, and this is how we gonna be moving forward. Because you want better. You want better for the team, and you want better for everybody involved. So, that's going to be the big thing moving forward. So on and so forth. But so, that was your Denver Nuggets season in review. Now, we have our last team of this show, last segment coming up, the Houston Rockets. So, stay tuned for the Season Rockets season in review right here on the podcast.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the Denver Nuggets season in review. We discussed this team's very talented. Joker and Jamal Murray are becoming players in this league. But are they going to be good enough in terms of the top end players to be able to compete against the LeBrons, the Kawhis of the world, the Giannis's of the world, and bring a championship to Denver? Are they good enough? People have the jury out on Joker. People have the jury out on Jamal Murray. This is also a very young team. Mike Malone has done a great job with this team. They deserve all the success they have gotten to this point. But are they good enough to make that push? Are they good enough to win? We'll have to see. We'll have to see. But now we're going to talk about another team here. The Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets, they have definitely made a total makeover from what they were before. They, last year, were Clint Capella, 4 guards, trying to beat Golden State, had them 2-2, lost in Game 6, out of the playoffs. They acquired Russell Westbrook this season, offseason. Because Chris Paul and James Harden did not get along. They acquired James's best friend from Oklahoma City days, Russell. People question this move because Russell is not a shooter. And what does Houston's analytically driven team do? Shoot threes and layups. Russell can't shoot threes at a good clip at all. And he's actually gotten worse based off before this past year. So, if you think about it, why was this move made? Russell Westbrook has the talent to be one of the greatest players to ever play this game. And will probably go down as one of the greatest players to ever play this game. Averaging triple doubles, winning an MVP, doing the things he's done. But would it work with James Harden in the Houston Rockets? And at the beginning of the season, no. I think everybody would agree it was a hard mesh. There were things that just weren't clicking. And then, James went through a little slouch. Russell picked up the slack and everything. But then they shocked the NBA world by trading Clint Capella away and going with an official small ball lineup with all guards, literally from the 1 to the 5. Now they have forwards, but they're not big forwards. So they're really at best maybe trotting out somebody who's 6'8". They still have Tyson Chandler on the roster, but he ain't never getting another minute unless they are like out of players and they have to put him in there. So if you think about it, think about this team, think about the organization, that's when I think Russell Westbrook really took off, because this move was really made for Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook's strength is getting into the paint because he's one of the most explosive players in the NBA and is one of the best at getting into the paint. If you take out a center who clogs the paint and now everybody's a shooter, Russell will most of the time win his one-on-one matchups. And even if somehow they did collapse on him, Russell has shown he has the ability to play make and get the ball out, which then puts all the shooters at an advantage. It kind of gives Houston two offenses they can run, which is either run through James or let Russell control the show. Now, there were some mixed results with this small ball lineup. They beat the Lakers coming back from the All-Star break with the small ball lineup. Then they lost 3 in a row. Then they lost 6 straight. Then they lost 3 in a row again. Actually, I think they lost 2 in a row after that. Then won 6 straight. Then lost 3 straight. Then I think they won right before the hiatus. So we're seeing very mixed results. Obviously, questions. Is it going to take a toll on them? Having 6'6", 6'4", 6'5" guys guarding 7-footers, 6'11" guys every night. Also, they have to be very on the string defensively, because you don't have that guy who's anchoring the middle. Everybody has to really be on their defensive P's and Q's for them to just hold up defensively. But also, at the same time, the point of this lineup is to outscore you. This is basically what the Suns were trying to do back when Mike D'Antoni was coaching them. Outscore everybody. Because the Houston Rockets, their success depends on if they make the 3. If the 3 goes down and they have efficient 3-point shooting nights, yeah, I would pick Houston to win most of those games. But the problem is, usually in the NBA, you're not going to be good all the time, and you may even have stretches where your team can't hit the 3 ball well. And that's going to be where the problem is. Remember, 2 years ago, they had Golden State down 3-2 and went cold from the 3-point land. All they had to do was keep making shots one of those last 2 games, and they would have beat them, and they couldn't do it. So, how do we know, just because now everybody can shoot a 3, and they're relying on that they're going to be successful this time around? We don't know. And it's one of those things where Daryl Morey is looking for anything he can do to get this team to win. Because he saw, okay, yeah, we were trying to beat Golden State, but we couldn't. Now we're going against teams who I guess you would say aren't Golden State, but still are top level, probably could compete with Golden State, and maybe some people would say could be Golden State with the Lakers and Clippers. But the Houston Rockets probably feel like they still have a chance to make something happen. Because if they're going to get to the playoffs, to get to the finals, they're going to have to go through more than likely both LA teams, or at least one. And if that's going to happen, they're going to have to come out there and really play their best basketball for at least 4 out of 7 games better than the other team. Because if they don't, they're not going to win. And everything that you've done now is another failed season. And Daryl Morey has to go back to the drawing board and say, what do I have to do to get this team to work? How can we beat them? You have to admit, Houston is trying. You have to admit, they have been in this point for years, and they continue to try to make change after change after change after change, hoping something might be able to get them over top. Because they feel like we have a superstar just as good as LeBron and Kawhi and James Harden. We have a second star in Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Anthony Davis. So what is keeping us from being able to beat them when we feel like our supporting cast and our stars are just as good as theirs? And that's why I think this could actually benefit Houston not having to play, because, think about it. If they go right to the playoffs, Houston now, all their bodies are fresh, so the small ball won't be wore out. They basically have been able to be fresh. Maybe if they've been communicating during this hiatus, they can say, what could we do better? How could we make this perform better? How could we execute this to the best of our ability so we can win? That's kind of the big question. Because they're going to try to figure out how we're going to get out of this situation. and try to beat one of these LA teams. Beat both. Make it to the finals. Beat the Bucks if we have to get to that point. All of those are questions that the Houston Rockets have to answer. And this season has been another good year. They win. They're in the playoffs. They're going to be a top 4 seed more than likely. But their question is never regular season. It's always playoffs. What will Houston do in the playoffs? Because if they don't win again, what will Daryl Morey do next? Who's getting fired? Who's getting traded? What's going to happen to get this team over the hump? But that was your Houston Rockets season in review. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. That's all we got for you today. I appreciate you tuning in. Hope you tune in for the next show. Just a reminder, everybody, don't forget to follow us on all our social media, and also stay safe, wash your hands, and stay socially isolated. Thank you, and have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.